people? Troll Pal CHH. We're back here again today with another topic video. The topic video today, should you upgrade? Everybody always asks the question, should you upgrade? It's probably the most asked question I get when it comes to when I post about new physical media releases and things like that. And being that this is something I do as a hobby now, I mean, obviously I'm somebody that is going to get an upgrade a lot more than the average person is. But I do have a responsibility to be honest about that sort of thing, and I do. I'm always honest about whether I think you should upgrade or not. But I want to answer this question in some sort of a general sense, because this is something that I think everybody kind of has their own opinion on, and there are scales, checks and balances that people have on whether it comes to upgrading a title. This is mostly stuff that has to do with horror movies a lot, because they're constantly getting new releases. Some stuff is, getting releases in 4K now that didn't have Blu-rays but 10, 12 years ago for stuff like in the non-horror sector. But, this really goes for all formats, of course. So I wrote down some notes. I basically made a checklist. Now, this is not a checklist to where, yes, you upgrade if everything gets checked. There's certain things that are going to weigh more to you as a collector as opposed to me or somebody else. This is stuff that you have to answer to yourself. So what I did is I wrote stuff down in my Friday the 13th notebook, and we're going to go over some of the things that I think you should consider when asking yourself the question, should I upgrade? You could put in any title in the horror genre or anything when answering this question. It really doesn't matter the title, but it also does matter at the same time, and I'll get into what I mean by that. So, should you upgrade? Let's say you've got a title on Blu-ray and a new 4K release is coming out. There's a lot of things you can look at, and it's like I said, it's going to be different for each person. But the first thing I want to talk about, and this is something that I feel it's not something that doesn't get talked about, like people shy away from it, but I also don't think people I think people are afraid to admit this sort of thing when they talk about it. Here's the reality. This is called physical media, right? Physical. What does that mean? Tangible. Something you can touch, something you can hold. When it comes to upgrading to a 4K release, I don't think it's that bad of a thing to consider, well, what's the presentation of the actual packaging look like? Is there cool artwork on it? What does the release look like? Is it bare bones? Does it have any cool artwork? What does the actual release look like? Now, for me personally, this is a factor, sure. Is it the end-all be-all? For me, no. But guess what? I do like good packaging. I think we all do, and there's nothing to be ashamed of with that. I feel like that's something that it's almost looked down upon when being talked about. And I kind of get it, because I think there are people that is very, very important to them. And for those people, God bless you, do your thing. But it's somewhat of a touchy subject, I feel, in the physical media world in terms of the collecting and the thoughts on this sort of thing. But that's something I think you can consider. For instance, It Follows. I have that movie on Blu-ray, and I could probably have been okay in a perfect world with just having that film on Blu-ray with the release that I have. I have a standard Blu-ray release of It Follows. I think I actually have a steelbook of It Follows, and it's a nice little steelbook. The movie looks good on Blu-ray, and I'm pretty happy with that. Second Sight really enticed me when I saw that their release. Now, they did this big, gorgeous, heavy set box with a booklet, pictures, cards, and everything. They had the film in a 4K presentation. And while that wasn't the end-all be-all for the reason of upgrading to It Follows, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I thought it was just a gorgeous physical media release. When I come in the horror room and I'm looking at my movies, I see that release and I say to myself, man, that is a beautiful, beautiful release from Second Sight. Those guys really know how to make the Rolls Royce of physical media releases. So that's something I think you can consider. I mean, let's go back to the days of Scream Factory. When they announced Halloweens 2 and 3, we were really excited that they were getting custom, brand new artwork. This was showing that we're going to give credence to these movies because of the fans of these films. We're going to do more than you probably would expect at that time. And it was a lot more than we would expect it. To get new artwork and things like this for movies, that was awesome. That was such a key factor into collecting. I think throughout the years that has become maybe less of a factor to other people and some people more of a factor. But yes, I think the physical packaging, the physical element of the physical media is something you should consider. how nice does it look on the shelf? I mean, people love the look of the Psycho box set, the Hellraiser quadrilogy, Torment of Terror, whatever the hell it's called, tetralogy. I don't even know what the hell they call the damn thing anymore. But yeah, that's a factor. The Empire of Screams box set. I own the majority of those films on previous releases. I had had Dolls from Scream Factory, which went out of print, which is a whole nother ball of wax. But I had a number of the titles. I had Cellar Dweller, I had Dolls, and that sort of thing. But man, talk about a gorgeous presentation. Now, that wasn't the end-all be-all for the Empire Scream box. As a matter of fact, they did a lot of great upscaling, which is another thing we'll talk about. But yeah, guess what, guys? That was a gorgeous box set. I bought it at a convention, too. I managed to go to Texas Frightmare when they had those box sets there early before the actual street release date. And when I saw the box set, I was like, this is gorgeous. I mean, this is such a head-turner. Can't wait to have it. So I think that's a factor, and I don't think that's anything we have to pretend isn't a factor, So the physical aspect of physical media is something to consider. The next thing, this is a very important one. Should you upgrade? And mostly this is talking about from Blu-ray to 4K. Should you upgrade? Well, what about the picture quality? How big is the uptake on picture quality? This is very, very important, because if this is the end-all be-all, there are times where you could probably say to yourself, but you know what? This is where I think the restoration is as important as the format itself. There are a lot of titles that I have from Arrow Video specifically that are Blu-ray versions, but they're taken from the original camera negative. They're 4K scans of the camera negative, but it's on a Blu-ray disc. Well, guess what? My RoboCop, now, I'm not saying that the 4Ks don't have improvements with the HDR and the Dolby Vision, etc., but I'm extremely happy with the 4K original negative for my release of RoboCop, for my release of American Werewolf in London, for my release of Tremors. I got the Blu-ray version of Tremors. Now, Tremors is a different situation because that came out at the same time. They released those simultaneously, one Blu-ray version, one 4K version, but they didn't used to do that. For instance, Basket Case. If picture quality is the only difference, but they don't have any new features or anything like that, I'm not going to upgrade it. The presentation's the same. It's the same box slipcover. I think you can get a different slipcover through a website, but I'm not interested in just getting it for the slipcover. That's not my end-all, be-all when it comes to upgrading. And at least in that instance, it's not enough for me to want to upgrade. So I think the uptake in picture quality is something you should that should be very important. And for you, the viewer, if you're not into reviewing movies and things like that, I take it upon myself sometimes to take a guess, and I'll pre-order a title like I just did with the Boogans. I just reviewed the Boogans. It should already be up on the channel. I know it is because I just posted it before I came in here and recorded. I take it upon myself to take the shots in the dark with stuff because I love doing this, and it's become a passion of mine. I took a risk on Boogans, and guess what? I was extremely happy with that 4K. Now, the Blu-ray for that is a little bit different situation because it's out of print. That was an Olive Films Blu-ray. It's out of print. The Boogans 4K looks sensational. So that's a very big jump in picture quality for me, and I thought, and I told everybody in the review, I think this is a great pickup. I think this is a really gorgeous 4K. It's great picture quality. The presentation's lovely on this. I think you guys will be happy. I recommend it. So the uptake in picture quality is important. It gets sticky. It really does get sticky when you're looking at stuff that is, 4K scan original camera negative Blu-rays to 4K. There are going to be times, and I know for a fact there is a few times that I can't think of any off my head, but I know it's happened. If you go through my channel, you'll probably hear me talk about it, where the jump isn't enough from a 4K scan Blu-ray to a 4K. So that's something to consider. If you have a nice release, and I've done a lot with Blue Underground, for instance. Blue Underground is another example. Zombie, I have the 4K scan negative of that on Blu-ray. Same thing with Maniac. I'm super happy with those. Again, that's not to say that there isn't a little bit of an uptake, but it's not enough for me to want to find out. It's not enough for me to want to take that leap. So that's where I sit at with titles like those. And the releases that I have, the presentation, quite frankly, going back to the first thing, is better on the Blu-ray releases. That's just fact. I mean, when they did those 3-disc Blu-ray versions for Maniac and Zombie, they're much nicer. The physical aspect of it is nicer on those releases than the 4K releases. The 4K releases are just standard slipcover cases. Now, the previous ones, the triple Blu-ray versions, the special edition Blu-ray versions, the last of the Blu-ray editions they did 4K negatives, but they gave you these gorgeous lenticular slipcovers, really nice packaging, CDs, that sort of thing. And I think that was really the tipping point that led me back to not upgrade. And I don't think there was much price difference in the 4K versions either, meaning like the price I spent on the Blu-ray versions was similar to what the 4K releases were. And if you're holding both in your hands, you can clearly see which one feels like more bang for your buck. Now, Blue Underground was pretty early in getting into the 4K game, so I assume the costs on stuff, that sort of thing, was high, and I understand that, but as a consumer, that was a decision I made, so that's something to consider as well. So the picture quality is obviously a given, and you really have to do your homework, watch reviews on stuff, take your time, don't feel the need to just want to get it because it's coming out. I know we all suffer with that because it's like Christmas every other Tuesday now, because I think it's twice a week, or bi-weekly instead of every Tuesday new releases come out. We love that feeling of getting new stuff, but when it comes to going to upgrades, I think we really all, including myself, have to be a little bit more cautious about that sort of thing. Again, I'm a little bit different from you maybe watching this because I take it upon myself to do this as a hobby, and I'm passionate about the upscaling and getting new releases and telling you guys about it. I enjoy that. So the uptake in picture quality is important. The next thing I want to talk about is obviously the features, the special features on 4K. Now, we're seeing now, especially in the horror world, features are become a little bit of a sticking point. Why? Because a lot of times these companies, they go the full throttle on the previous Blu-ray releases. They do documentaries. Scream Factory's the biggest example of this. They're going above and beyond for the previous Blu-ray releases. They're getting all these interviews. They're getting documentaries made. They're getting locations on these releases. And they're not offering new features on the 4Ks. Now, that's something I think we can probably lighten up with when it comes to the criticism of that, including myself. I know I was critical of that, but if you watch my reviews for some of the Scream Factory 4Ks, I think I've even said, to be honest with you guys, I don't know what else they could have added in terms of special features. But it's not that simple. I think what you have to also consider is, okay, well, are they porting those over to the 4Ks? Are they still giving you all those features again on those 4K releases? Because I think that's crucial. You need to give people all that stuff again on the releases. Obviously that's important when it comes to features. And I think another thing you have to consider when it comes to upgrading is, and this is very important, sentimental value. And what I mean by that is this is something to consider. I'm a person that is very much sentimental value. When I look at my release of Vampires, I remember going to FYE right before they were going to close it down because the landlords in my crappy mall tripled the rent on them, basically just to kick them out. Why they did that, I have no idea, because I had a great FYE. But I remember that was one of the very last, if not the last, Scream Factory Blu-rays I ever got from FYE. And that's a special thing for me. It's kind of bittersweet, but I remember that. So if they upgraded Vampires onto 4K, I don't think I would sell I know I wouldn't sell my Blu-ray. But that's something, for me, how I feel. If you can sell previous releases to upscale to 4K, let's say you take a title like Creepshow, and you're like, okay, well, I love Creepshow. I want to see it in 4K. That's the way I want to watch the film, and the highest picture quality can be. I'll sell my Blu-ray to offset the cost. If you're that kind of person that can do that, you should not really have much issue when it comes to upgrading. But as physical media collectors, I think a lot of us struggle with that. I think we covet, which is why we collect physical. We covet and we appreciate. So I think, as well as the ownership of movies, believe me, I'm there too, because I don't like anybody to tell me I can or cannot watch something at any given time. I don't think anybody really likes to be able to be told that anyway, but because we covet and we love physical media, I think that is probably something we all deal with, the anxiety of letting go because of the sentimental value and things like that. But if you're not that way and you have no issue saying, oh, I'll gladly sell my previous releases of this to offset the costs, you are steps above people like me that have a hard time doing that. And this is probably one of the most important reasons to whether, yes, you should upgrade or no, you should not upgrade. The cost. The cost is so important. We're seeing certain issues with 4K right now. Some companies are just almost purposely trying to load the releases with so much stuff to charge a lot. I don't mean to call Synapse out, but they did a release of The Convent. I want to see this movie. They wanted $50 for the 4K. Now, I like Synapse. I'm a fan of Synapse. I have a number of titles from them, and I love a lot of the Blu-ray releases they put out. I can't spend $50 on one movie, and it's not coming with books and all this stuff. I'm not saying I necessarily need all that, because I go back to, you know, the first thing we talked about, which is the physical aspect of it. How nice is it? That release of The Convent is not $50 nice. It's just not. The cost is so important. One of the reasons I'm a big fan of the Lionsgate stuff right now is they were doing a bunch of steelbooks for movies, and their prices have been sensational. Most of them are $19.99. They were doing $19.99 4K steelbooks for their titles, and that's just sensational. Price is so important, I think, right now with a 4K format in terms of people not only buying the releases but also upgrading. Because I'd like to think a lot of these companies nowadays probably should know and realize, okay, the physical media market is now gotten smaller, and it's clearly cinephiles, people that love movies, people that have loved movies and love to collect movies. Odds are a lot of these people probably own some of these old titles. Let's try to get the costs low. I feel like Lionsgate understands that. I feel like Lionsgate knows that. And so they're meeting the customers halfway on that aspect of it. So the cost is very important. Hey, should you upgrade? Well, let's see what the price is on this thing. If the price is stupid, you know, you have to vote with your dollar. As hard as that can be, because as physical media collectors, we want to see companies thrive and do well. But they also have to look out for our best interests as well. Okay, it's a two-way street. Another thing I want to ask you guys with upgrading is ask yourself this, or another thing I want to say is ask yourself this. How much mileage will you get out of it? This is something I think that's very important. What does that mean, how much mileage you get out of it? Okay, let's say there's a title you have on Blu-ray, and let's say you are a sentimental person who doesn't like to sell previous releases, albeit for backups, or that's just, you don't want to do that. You just say to yourself, I'm not interested in selling my Blu-ray release of this, but I think I want to upgrade the 4K. How much mileage will you get out of it? Let's just take a movie I love, for example. It's an extreme example, but take this example and put it into your life. Return of the Living Dead. Okay? Let's look at the other aspects already. Did they port all the other features over? Yes, they did. What's the cost? Cost isn't great, but it's in line with a lot of the boutique label 4K releases. It just is. How much mileage will you get out of it? I'm going to get a lot of mileage out of it. I'm going to get a lot of mileage out of it. If you look at watching the release as being, what is your time worth an hour personally in your free time? Let's say it's worth $3 an hour. Free time. I'm going to get by the time I watch this over the next couple of years, I will have gotten my money's worth out of the release, if you look at it that way. And I think that's important. How much mileage will you get out of an upgrade? How often will you watch it? If it's something you were never a really, really big fan of, but you kind of like the movie, and you might get the 4K and watch it once, but then never watch it maybe ever again, it's possible. That's something I've really tried to start being honest with my own self about. That's why I'm not upgrading a lot of stuff from Kino. They're putting out some good stuff, but I know I'm not going to watch that a whole lot. Maybe I should just take it easy and stick with the Scream Factory Blu-ray or the Arrow Blu-ray or whatever the previous company that had it was, because Kino's taking a pretty strong stance right now of getting titles. Monster Squad, my favorite Fred Decker film. I watch that once a year. Easy. So guess what? Yeah, that was a no-brainer. I was going to upgrade the Monster Squad. I have a UK Blu-ray of that. I don't even have the Olive Blu-ray of that. I have something else, but that's besides the point. And I think for a lot of people, they probably, I would say at least 50% of people that got the Monster Squad 4K had the Blu-ray or the DVD from Olive. I'd say at least half. And I could be shy on that. I could be conservative on that. Maybe more people. But my point is, I think a lot of people said to themselves, I know I will get the mileage out of this. And that's an important factor to them. So that's something you should definitely ask yourself as well. So, I mean, there's other things I can think of, but that's really the main ones. The physical aspect of it. How nice is it? What is the uptake in picture quality? Based off of the median reviews you watch, always watch at least a couple of reviews. I'm not saying I should be the end-all be-all. I'm glad you're a viewer, and I'm glad you respect my opinion if you do on these things. But do a little due diligence. I would expect that from my viewers. I wouldn't expect you guys to just listen to what I say about a title. I think you kind of get a sense of how I perceive things, and you can understand where I'm coming from, but you might want to get some different opinions on upscales. The features, it's important that they do reissue previous features, especially if you're somebody that, this is really important, if you're somebody that doesn't have that sentimental value to where you're fine selling it, well, what happens if the features aren't ported over to the 4K? Now you got to keep the Blu-ray. Then you have to ask yourself, well, is it worth it to upgrade then? Because if they're not going to give me the documentary for, this, that, or the third on this 4K release, but they have it on the, let's say, for instance, Army of Darkness, they didn't put the documentary on there, which is the best part. I love watching that as much as the movie. They didn't put that on the 4K, but it's on the Blu-ray release. Now you have to figure out, well, is it worth it? Is it worth to upgrade it? Because I'm not going to have to get all the features. I have to keep my Blu-ray release to enjoy something I really like from that release. So it's important that I think it's important that they do port over all the features, because that's something that's important for people that want to sell their old stuff. Because if they don't do that, they can kind of screw over the people that, are willing to do that, to sell their previous releases. That's one thing I applaud MVD for. If you look at their Ghoulies releases, they got the features that Scream Factory did for Ghoulies. And not only that they also added new features. So you could sell off your previous Ghoulies releases, which Scream Factory enthusiasts still would probably pay some decent money for the releases that they did, the 1 and 2 double pack for Ghoulies. And you could have the MVD version of Part 1 and Part 2. This is the Blu-ray for Part 2. They're going to do a 4K relatively soon. But you could sell that off, and you could be fine with the MVD releases. So, that, again, the cost is super important. The cost is super important. I think we have to really get the 4K prices under control for normal releases. Bigger releases, of course, you're going to pay a little bit money more. The mileage, how much mileage will you get out of it? And I think, given that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things, I think if you get at least 2 to 3 things that you can check off out of those things I've talked about, you're probably in a decent stance to upgrade. And sometimes you got to go with your gut. Sometimes you can't help yourself. I'm guilty. Sometimes you're just going to upgrade because you can't help it. You're in the heat of the moment. You're excited and you upgrade. But I think if you can stop, make a checklist off of some of the stuff I said, or your own checklist on things you might think are important or are important, and you can at least check a couple boxes, then you can probably upgrade and make a good decision that way. So I wanted to do a video about this, guys, and I wanted to see where your guys' head is at with that sort of thing, with should you upgrade from Blu-ray to 4K. It's a topic that I think is very important today with the physical media landscape and the way movies are released and how they're released. And hopefully by talking about this sort of thing, we can get improvements and we can have these companies hear, hey, as a whole, this is what we as a physical media collectors would like from releases that maybe that was released previously on Blu-ray from you guys, or if it's new release, that sort of thing. I like to talk about this sort of stuff because I think it can only help when these companies can hear how we feel about this sort of thing. So, guys, let me know what your take is on that. Should you upgrade from Blu-ray to 4K? Let me know what your criteria is. Let me know how you come up with your decisions. Let me know what's important to you and that sort of thing. So thank you guys for watching. This is your old pal CHH. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Until next time, we'll see you guys later. Huge, giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind-the-scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.